Hey everyone, welcome back for another deep dive with us. This time we're going to tackle a question that seems simple at first, but gets complicated really fast. Is progress always a good thing?
Yeah, that's the question.
To help us unpack this, we're looking at an essay by Ashtiani. It's called Le monde est-il en danger de progrès? Which translates to, is the world in danger of progress?
Catchy title, right.
And Ashtiani doesn't hold back. He really digs into the idea that progress, the way we usually think about it, might actually be hurting us more than it helps.
And that's an important distinction, I think. Ashtiani isn't saying that progress is automatically bad. It's more that we tend to blindly accept this idea of progress without really questioning what it means and what it costs.
Yeah, it's like we assume more technology, more stuff, more economic growth always equals a better world. But Ashtiani wants us to pump the brakes a little and look at the bigger picture.
Exactly, because when you look at the history of how we even came to define progress, you see how much it's changed, and maybe not for the better.
So how did we get here? Like, how did we end up with this definition of progress that Ashtiani's challenging?
Well, he points out that the 19th century was a real turning point. Before that, progress was often talked about in terms of morality and philosophy.
Right.
Were we becoming better people? Are we living more just and virtuous lives?
Or like a more internal kind of progress.
Exactly. But then in the 19th century, progress got really tied up with economic and technological advancement.
So instead of asking, are we becoming better people, we started asking, are we producing more? Are we consuming more?
Yeah, it became a lot about measurable, quantifiable things.
And that's when things start to get complicated.
Because that shift, as Ashtiani argues, led us down a path where we prioritize economic growth, even if it comes at the cost of social equality or environmental sustainability.
And he's not just talking about hypotheticals. He uses some pretty stark examples. Like he throws out these numbers, 9 million people dying from hunger every year.
Which is a staggering statistic when you really think about it.
And then he says 4.5 billion people living in poverty. And it makes you wonder how much of that suffering is happening because of the way we've defined and pursued progress.
It's a powerful question, and one that a lot of people would rather not ask.
Right, because if we're honest with ourselves, those numbers suggest that maybe our definition of progress isn't working for everyone.
And Ashtiani argues that the very systems we've put in place to achieve progress can actually make these problems worse in some cases.
Like how?
Well, he points to things like the exploitation of resources and labor in developing countries, often driven by demand in wealthier nations.
So it's like this interconnected system where the pursuit of progress in one place can fuel poverty and inequality in another.
And it's not just a developing world problem either. He also talks about the widening gap between the rich and the poor, even in developed countries.
So even with all our technological advancements and economic growth, we're still seeing this growing divide.
Right. It challenges this assumption that a rising tide lifts all boats.
More like a rising tide lifts all yachts, but leaves a lot of people stranded on the shore.
Exactly, and that's what Ashtiani wants us to grapple with, this idea that maybe our current definition of progress is leaving a lot of people behind.
It's like we're all on this speeding train of technological advancement. But as Ashtiani is asking us, who's really in control of this train? And who's being left at the station?
And it's not just about people being left behind either. Ashtiani connects this whole idea of unchecked progress to the environmental damage we're seeing.
Yeah, the essay doesn't sugarcoat anything there. It gets right into those uncomfortable truths about pollution and deforestation and, of course, climate change.
Right, and his argument is that these aren't just unfortunate side effects of progress. They're actually symptoms of a system that's fundamentally flawed.
So we can't just keep patting ourselves on the back for all our technological innovations while ignoring the environmental cost.
Exactly. He says, we're consuming resources faster than the planet can replenish them, and we're pushing ecosystems to the brink.
It's like we're on a collision course with nature.
He uses this really vivid analogy in the essay. He says it's like we're speeding towards a cliff, but instead of hitting the brakes, we're arguing about what music to play on the way down.
Okay, that's a pretty powerful image. So we've got the social costs and the environmental costs. But then Ashtiani also digs into science and technology, which seems a little counterintuitive at first because aren't those supposed to be the drivers of progress?
Right, you'd think so, wouldn't you? But he has this interesting take on it. He doesn't see science and technology as inherently good or bad. He says they're tools. And like any tool, it can be used for good or for ill.
So it's not about demonizing technology itself. It's about being mindful of how we use it.
Exactly. He uses the example of nuclear energy. On the one hand, you have the potential for clean energy, but on the other hand, you have the very real threat of nuclear weapons.
Yeah, it's like that saying, just because we can doesn't mean we should.
Precisely. And he argues that this applies to a lot of areas of scientific advancement, whether it's biotechnology, artificial intelligence, even something like social media.
It's all about how we wield these tools.
And more importantly, what our intentions are in the first place.
So it's not enough to just invent new things. We have to think critically about the implications of those inventions.
And that's where Ashtiani argues we've fallen short.
We'd become so enamored with the idea of progress that we haven't stopped to ask ourselves if we're actually progressing in the right direction.
And he worries that this blind faith in technology could actually prevent us from solving the very problems that technology has created.
It's like we're so busy looking at our phones that we don't see the iceberg ahead.
And by the time we do, it might be too late.
Okay, so far we've mostly focused on the potential downsides of progress as Ashtiani sees them. But I'm guessing he's not saying that all progress is bad, right?
No, not at all. He acknowledges that progress has led to some incredible things, especially in terms of improving our quality of life.
So where does he see the most positive impacts?
Well, he starts with something that's pretty basic but really impactful: how we travel.
Okay, how's that?
Well, he points out that back in the day, it took Julius Caesar and Napoleon roughly the same amount of time to travel from Paris to Rome. They were both relying on horses and carriages,
Yeah, makes sense.
And then he compares that to today, where we can make that same journey in a matter of hours, thanks to high-speed trains and airplanes.
It really makes you appreciate how far we've come.
It does, and it's not just about speed and convenience either. Ashtiani also talks about how advancements in communication have changed things.
The internet, obviously.
Exactly. He says the internet has connected people and ideas across the globe in ways that were unimaginable just a few decades ago.
It's really revolutionized the way we share information and connect with each other.
It really has. And he also points to advancements in healthcare as a major win for progress.
Yeah, the essay mentions things like the eradication of smallpox and the development of antibiotics.
Right, and more recently, breakthroughs in gene editing and personalized medicine.
It seems like every day there's some new discovery about how to treat diseases that were once considered incurable.
It's pretty remarkable when you think about it.
But it also kind of highlights this weird paradox we're in. On the one hand, we've achieved all these incredible things, but on the other hand, we're facing these huge existential threats. And as Ashtiani points out, those threats are often directly related to the way we've pursued progress in the first place.
It's like we've been so focused on moving forward that we haven't stopped to consider if we're on the right path.
So where do we go from here? How do we reconcile these two sides of progress?
Well, Ashtiani doesn't claim to have all the answers, but he does offer some guidance.
Okay.
He says we need to start by redefining what we mean by progress.
Okay, so instead of just focusing on economic growth and technological advancement.
Right, he says we need to prioritize things like human well-being, social equality, and environmental sustainability.
So it's about looking at the bigger picture, not just the bottom line.
Exactly, and that's a pretty radical shift.
Because it means changing the way we measure success.
It does, and it requires us to ask ourselves some tough questions, like, are we really okay with a system where a small percentage of the population benefits while the majority suffers or the environment deteriorates?
Those are questions that a lot of people would rather avoid.
They are, but Ashtiani argues that we can't afford to ignore them any longer.
He uses that example of nuclear weapons, talking about how much time and money and resources have been poured into developing these destructive technologies.
And he asks us to imagine if we redirected even a fraction of those resources towards solving problems like climate change or global poverty.
It's a powerful thought experiment.
It is, and it highlights the fact that we already have the knowledge and the resources to create a better world.
The question is, do we have the will?
Exactly, and that's what Ashtiani leaves us grappling with, this idea that progress isn't just something that happens to us. It's something we actively create through our choices and our actions.
So it's not about stopping progress altogether. It's about steering it in a direction that benefits everyone.
Precisely, and that's a message that I think is more relevant now than ever before.
I agree, and it's what makes this deep dive so important. We're not just talking about abstract concepts here. We're talking about the future of humanity. And the choices we make today will determine what that future looks like.
That's a powerful way to put it.
So let's keep asking the tough questions. Let's keep pushing for a more just and sustainable world. And let's make sure that progress really does mean progress for everyone. Thanks for joining us for another deep dive. We'll see you next time.